We're calling the meeting to order at 6:23 on Wednesday the 9th. It's a little unusual for us. We're usually here and ready to go at 6:15, so I apologize for that. I want to welcome everybody here, and we have a good agenda today and good topics of discussion. I just want to remind everybody that there are two types of public comments. One of them is on every individual motion. Every motion on the agenda, we get a chance for a public comment before the board votes. And I will just ask for who wants to speak about it, and we'll call you to the mic. Then there's the open general public comment period. That is item number 9, and that is on any matter that is within our purview, anything that we have anything to say about, but is not on the agenda. So if there's something on the agenda, hold it till the motion time. If it's not on the agenda, please come up during item 9, which we will open to the floor for public comments, okay? All right, thank you. And with that, if we can start with our Pledge of Allegiance. You can all rise. Jason.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Happy New Year, everybody.
All right, if we can have the roll call, please.
All right, David, absent. Hassan.
Here.
Susan.
Here.
Alex.
Here.
Jason. Here. Andrew. Here. Brandy.
You bet.
Becky.
Here.
Assad. Absent. Gabriel here. Isam.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
We have a quorum for the meeting. We are going to proceed. Item number 5 is a motion to approve the November 2018 monthly expenditure report. The monthly expenditure report is in the packet. I left 3 copies of the packet at the table over there. If anybody wants to look at the expenditure report, please look at it and put it back there for others to look at if they need to. Mr. Treasurer, would you walk us through the motion?
Sure. Motion to approve the November monthly expenditure report.
I'll second it.
Any public comments on the monthly expenditure report for November? All right, any board comments on the report?
Is the constant contact for the telephone company?
Well, let's ask a question and the treasurer will attempt to answer.
Constant contact, is that annual renewal or 465?
That was a 6-month bulk renewal.
Okay, thank you.
I think at a savings of 10 or 15%.
Thank
All right, with no further questions, call the vote.
All right, David, absent. Hassan.
you. Yes.
Susan.
Here.
Alex.
Yes.
Jason.
Yes.
Andrew.
Yes.
Brandy.
Yep.
Becky.
Yeah.
Assad is absent. Gabriel, yes. Isam.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Item 6 is the treasurer's report.
Board members, on your left of your table is the usual draft from the funding portal. You see we spent about $11,700. There's another $250 we've already voted to spend for bank, for the mixer, which I have to resubmit payment for. I'm not going to get into that. It's frustrating. But we've already approved that. Okay, so that takes us to about $12,000 of our $42,000 that we've spent. And we are in January. We are now in month 7 of our fiscal year. Okay, we just crossed half number. Our fiscal year ends June 30. Okay. I know it's cut off, but you'll see on the left donut that it says boardhood purpose. That's neighborhood purpose grants, where we've allocated 35% of our funding. Community improvement projects is below that. We've allocated 24%, and the rest for our general operating and outreach items. You'll see on the right, we've only spent a little bit in MG, $1,000. We've done nothing for our community improvement projects in terms of money actually spent. I know there's a project that's been approved, but we've yet to spend any money. Okay. I don't know off the top of my head what's uncategorized, since I can't possibly submit a payment without one. So clearly the funding department has moved $124 something. Hopefully next meeting I'll have a resolution. And that's it.
All right, any questions about the treasurer's report?
I have a question about the Tampa median. Is that, so that the expenses to date, that's not included because we haven't spent the money, right?
That's correct.
But it's not appearing on the pie charts either, right? Because we haven't spent.
Correct, that's only money spent.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you.
I could technically reserve or save
Okay.
the money. We did that last year at the end of the year to kind of help ourselves budget.
Right.
So you certainly could, in your mind, allocate $7,500, but
I just wanted to.
yeah, it's cash basis.
Okay.
And I do want to remind, before I come down here, I do want to remind the board, it is use it or lose it.
Right.
Okay?
This also doesn't include, I'm assuming, a lot of holiday party expenses that.
Correct. If it has not been paid, so if I haven't received a receipt, we don't have an approval for reimbursement, anything like that, then it will not show up on this report, on this graph.
Any question from the public on the treasurer's report? Any comment? All right, thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Item 7 is presentation from representative elected officials of city departments. We have the big dog here, so.
Right.
Big dog just ate. Signage carbohydrates, so please. I don't want to go on a riff about my weight. Can I use this?
Sure.
Good evening. I always feel like singing Lou Rawls when I get on these kind of corded mics here. Great to be here. My name is Ron Rubine. Most of you I know. Judy affectionately calls me the brother she never wanted. Thank you, Judy. I'll be here all night. Just kidding. But I am formerly Mitch England. I'm still Mitch Englander's district director. He's no longer here, and I'm sure most of you are aware that he resigned as of January 1 via con Dios. Really was an honor to work for him. Did some incredible work, certainly for the 4 or 5 years that I was with him, and he's now in the private sector doing some very cool stuff with Irving A's off and entertainment and all kinds of fun stuff. So in terms of, obviously, the council has been on hiatus for a while. Not a lot of legislative stuff going on. I can certainly answer questions about any kind of issues that you may have concerns about. But we do have a new caretaker. Anytime an elected official vacates or a city councilor vacates in office prior to the term being up, the city council appoints what's called a caretaker, with the caveat that whoever is that caretaker can't then run for that vacant seat. So we have, most of you know Greg Smith, former city councilman. So it's kind of an unprecedented thing in that most caretakers don't have the right to vote. So ultimately, that council district is kind of not really without representation, but they don't have that full kind of presence on the council sitting in the horseshoe. With Greg Smith, he's like a regular councilman because he was already a council person. So you have, and I've known him for a while. He's a great guy. So you're in good hands and as good a designee for this community that you could certainly ask for. So aside from that, the special election is set for June 6th. You guys all know about that stuff. I know there's some issues in terms of 50-acre park and things like that coming up. Just certainly serve as a resource. Any kind of questions I can answer, any kind of clarification or not. And I've always said you guys are the second best looking neighborhood council in Porter Ranch. There's only one. It's a joke, but no, I love these guys. So
It's not a joke if you have to explain.
You're right. That is the hallmark of a bad joke, is if you have to clarify the joke. Yeah, you're right. That is a kiss of death. But anything else? Any kind of questions about anything? Yes.
You said the council election is June 6th?
I don't know. Is it the 6th? Oh, I thought you were giving me some kind of gothic. Yeah, Game of Thrones, right. Oh, it's the 4th, yeah, whatever it is, good game, the 4th, early June. And the way it works is if there's, if nobody gets over 50%, then there's a runoff in the fall, so, yes.
I had a constituent ask me today if the new park is going to have a rec center that can be rented out for community events, and if so, when will be
You
available?
mean like a Northridge Park with the gymnasium kind of thing?
Yeah.
I don't think that's in the plans, no. I know it's got state-of-the-art everything. It doesn't have that, it's got the amphitheater, it's got, a lot of bells and whistles, but not like Northridge Park. If that's what you're envisioning, yeah.
I'm guessing that's what the
Yeah.
park is looking for.
Candidates, can we meet them? Where we could meet them?
Thank you very much. Just to clarify, we're not involved in the election at all. We're a council office that's still going about the work of serving the community. I'm sure there'll be many community forums, there'll be debates, there'll be, plenty of information on whoever the candidates end up being. And, but, these folks always have their finger on the pulse of the process. They'll be able to, don't think you guys do, you'll know. So you can find out I'm sure you'll have candidates come up here and speak to the council. So, yeah, there'll be no shortage of information in terms of where to meet them and hear what they have to say. Yeah.
Did I hear you correct that there is a date set for the special?
It is the 4th, right? Yeah, it's the 4th, yeah.
Special
Yes?
election? June 4th?
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah. All right, so enough. I know you guys got a full agenda. Thank you very much, and nice meeting you guys too.
Before you leave on.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so, the Porter Ranch Art Trust Fund?
Yes.
Okay, so that was formed, and we see there's quite a bit of money here.
Right.
So
What is the total on that account?
$269,000.
Okay, yeah, and I know you sent a letter
Sent a letter.
to the Department of Cultural Affairs, right? Yeah.
So, we're just kind of wondering the next steps, how we can, what's going on with the next steps on that.
That's a good, what did they, honest to God, I don't know. What did the DCA
We
say?
haven't gotten a response yet, I believe. Gabriel?
The response was, we have received your letter.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and just to just kind of circle back before I talk, the thing, I forgot it was,
I was asking about the DWP connection.
that thing's not a problem, but the other thing was the traffic issue on Reseda Boulevard above Rinaldi, the speed not being any kind of controlled intersection. Who brought that up?
We brought it up last time.
Right, and so I talked to Ken Feruzman, and he's willing to work with us to find some kind of solution. Yeah, I think I may have indicated that
See
email.
that in Kirkland.
I think you guys are talking, is that the specific intersection? I thought it was like somewhere there just to break up the speed.
Right, the sharp turn.
Yeah, I don't know, I don't know this individually you guys do, but, and then, so if you want to, somebody email me, Jason, about the DCA thing, I'll talk to, that's kind of the leadership, that's a Hannah Lee, Nicole question, so I'll find out.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay, all right.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you much, Ron. Appreciate it.
You got off the hook easy.
Any other city department? Well, within today. Okay. Thank you. And item 8, we don't have any budget advocate, I assume?
Nope.
Do we? No? Okay. All right, we are ahead of schedule.
That's good.
Item 9, that's the public comments on matters not on the agenda and within the purview of the board. So, can you, by raise of hand, how many have public comments to make? I have one card from Lorraine, and that's fine. From anybody else?
I didn't fill it
That's fine, I just need to know, show of hands, how many wants to make comments, that's all.
I agree.
3.
1, 2, 3, okay. Laura, 4? Where?
Oh,
4. Okay. Lorraine, I'm gonna set it up for 2 minutes, if you can work with that.
Well, good evening, everyone.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Lorraine Lundquist. I am a candidate for LA City Council in this district. Thank you for asking where you can meet candidates. We're going to come to you. Yes, here I am. Many of you know me as I've been here quite a few times, especially with the Aliso Canyon gas leak, gas blowout disaster, advocating for our community. I am a scientist. I am an educator at CSUN, faculty associate at the Institute for Sustainability. I am a homeowner in Northridge. I am a neighborhood council board member of Northridge East Neighborhood Council, the co-chair of the homeless committee there and the homeless liaison as well for my neighborhood council. I am a mom. I am a foster parent as well. I am an active community member. And I'm a fighter for my neighborhood and my community. So I would like to tell you a little bit more about what I'd like to do as your council member. First of all, I'd love to bring exceptional city services to this district. I think all of our citizens really know how much they want the city to fill the potholes, trim the trees, keep the sidewalks in good repair, keep the parks in good maintenance. I think those are bread and butter issues for the city council, and those are some of the things that everyday citizens interact with most in our city and would really like to see happen. I'm also really concerned about homelessness, and I would like to bring attainable housing to the residents of Los Angeles, including the people on our streets, and I would like to get them off of the streets and into housing. We have a lot of money allocated for that. Some of it is not being spent well, some of it is not being spent at all, and it's time to do a better job at that. I would also like for our children to not be priced out of our neighborhoods. I think everybody deserves to have some form of housing that is attainable to them. And then lastly, my passion in life has been working on climate change issues. I am a clean energy expert. I am a member of the advisory panel for the 100% renewable study for Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. And I've been advocating for environmental issues throughout our community in many different ways, including around the Aliso Canyon disaster. So I really believe that when Los Angeles decides to address our climate crisis in ways that we haven't seen many cities do before, that those results will spread throughout the globe, and that other cities will watch what we do and take it as a model, and that we really can solve this crisis if we come together. Thank you.
All right, please. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, everybody. You're being handed out a flyer that my father prepared. The neighborhood of Porter Ranch has a serious problem with sign ordinance violations, specifically with what Toll Brothers does on a weekly basis by duct taping their signs to the poles throughout Porter Ranch, directing traffic to model homes, hammering stakes into the grass and into the areas around the sidewalks, putting A-frame signs on the sidewalk that impede the people from pushing the crosswalk buttons, and it's a serious problem. The four major problems that this causes is, first and foremost, blight. Everybody here knows what blight is, and it is an eyesore, and it is not fair, for whatever reason, that they feel that they are above the law. And part of why we are here tonight is to ask the city, the neighborhood council, to lobby on our behalf and get the city to enforce the sign laws. In addition to blight, it causes trash. Not only does we have high winds, as everybody knows, it blows into the street, it causes trash, but we pay every month the Porter Ranch fee for the maintenance in and around Porter Ranch. And those landscapers have to pick up those stakes out of the grass, and we pay for them to do that work and to throw those away or dispose of them. Number three, and I mentioned it, it blocks the flow of walking traffic, of which there is a lot in Porter Ranch. And number four, perhaps foremost, and you'll see it in the pictures that you have on your tables, it causes damage to the light poles. They are stapling to wood poles or nailing to wood poles. They are duct taping to street signs. They're duct taping to the light poles. And in the heat of the summer, the duct tape leaves an adhesive residue that destroys these brand new poles. For whatever reason, they feel they're above the law. We would like it if the city, if the neighborhood council could lobby on our behalf and correct this. If it can't be corrected, I advise that we open up and expand and let all the businesses in the area post their signs, including the strip clubs and the Subway restaurants, etc. I think then and only then, perhaps will change occur. Thank you. Thanks for the food.
Sure. Keith Hammond? No. Third. Oh, go ahead, please.
I don't know if this is the right place right now.
This
I just
is-
wanted, it is okay. I just wanted to propose the new name for the
That
park.
is-
No, this is not the,
That's not,
it's not
there yet.
Not here. Okay, I'll be back.
Wait.
Okay, I will wait.
It's coming.
Hi, I just wanted to bring up a concern that in the recent past, we are seeing increased instances of thefts and robberies, and particularly in our community in the last month, so there have been 8 instances, what I've come to know. I don't know if there may be more as well. I just wanted to bring that awareness and wanted to understand if anything is going on overall that we should be aware of. And I'm sure at an individual level, we might be taking some precautions, but that may or may not be enough. We just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good one.
Sorry, my name is Manoj.
Okay, any other public comment on items not on the agenda?
I'd like to say something.
Go ahead.
I moved here about 4 months ago. My wife and I bought a house here 2 years ago. And I just really appreciate all the parks, all the hiking trails, and all the outdoor activity that this area offers. I moved from a very active community in Mexico up to this area to be close to my son and my grandkids. And I just never believed that I would find that much good activity in the area. And I don't know if you have anything to do with the parks or the recreation areas, but you do a fantastic job of maintaining them. Thank you. Thank you.
A good comment.
A good comment.
What was that? What was it? The city?
All right. With that done, item 10 is board member comments and committee updates, and I would, feel free to, in your comments, if something came up that is within the purview of your committee, that you would like to say something about what your committee is doing about that or what you can do, this is a good time to do that. That's why it's following public comments. So that I break the routine, because I've been...
His hand up.
Just a second.
Assad wants to go.
Would you let me do this for a second? This time we're gonna go alphabetical. How about that? Oh, there we go. My last-
First
No, on the last name.
He wins either
On
way.
the last. Who is first?
It's on the jar.
Oh, it's not? There you go.
Well, that's it.
Good.
All right. First one is a suggestion, and then the second one I'll answer on to this one. So the first one, it's with the CD12 elections and all that coming up. I think we should,
It's on the agenda.
no, it's my comment, that I think along the line, we should have maybe a town hall or something. Yeah. Second thing is this one. My other hat, my daytime job, I enforce the ordinance on these signs. And I've never got any complaint from you, but I personally removed many of these. I wrote Chappelle, I wrote Porter Ranch, I wrote Toll Brothers, I wrote everybody, not only within our community, citywide. I'm a 3-member team, and I have 215,000 streetlights. So
We know that because we have complaints to your office.
I never got a complaint from you. The complaint comes to me personally.
You know, there used to be a street light.
I'm the Bureau of Street Light.
Maybe
Yeah,
I would be glad to volunteer for your
Yeah,
office.
and what I'll do is, so that I have more support from my management, I'm gonna take this to them tomorrow, and we'll try to enforce it more. It just, I have everybody, and you name it, they put things, political signs, lost my cat, home sale, and they're all illegal. Huh?
Christmas lights,
Christmas light, you name it, you name it. I mean, everything.
real estate signs. Anybody here in real estate put a sign up?
Yeah. Now, as regards the ones on the grass, that's outside the city limits.
There are pages in there
Right.
on your sign.
Right.
You'll
So
see.
the only ones I can enforce, and I'll try tomorrow to do, I don't know what else to do.
That's all we're
Even,
looking for. We have heard
Yeah.
about the enforcement.
I even had
People
illegal
don't work
banners.
weekends.
So what
You know, I did not intend for this to be a debate.
Just very quick.
This is a presentation from you on what you can do and
And
what
that's
you
it.
can do it. Thank you.
So just to get, so I offered to be a liaison between you folks and Assad and our governmental liaison from Chappelle and from Toll. They're great folks, and certainly this is not an act of God thing. We can fix something here, so we'll have the conversation.
Asad, anything else you want to report to us on your committees before your time's up?
oh, before my time up? Okay. And then I guess my committee is the safety and transit. We have monthly meetings with the Devonshire Police, Gabriel, myself, and David, he's not here. And crime has went down in a way, but we had a lot of burglaries within the gated communities.
Really?
Yeah, one of them is being discussed in the next door room. That's why I'm bouncing rooms in my community. But it's all had to do with people not locking their doors, leaving the car open, and everybody is getting into it, things like that. And the rest, Gabriel can say.
Perfect.
Time on.
Thank you. Who's next? Susan.
Okay, I have 3 committees. I chair the Sustainability Committee. And first of all, there's a box over there with sneakers with holes in them. Those are my running shoes. And anybody who wants to recycle rubber running shoes, walking shoes, I will take them to the Nike Regrind Center. What happens is they're ground up and they end up in our playgrounds and our parks. They're really soft, bouncy material. So if you want to help, recycle and make our parks better, then please put your old shoes over there. I will bring them every meeting. You're going to take your top now. I wear them out every couple of months because I'm a jogger, so I'm always making, trips up there. Sustainability meets the third Tuesday of every month, January 15th at the PRNC Library on Tampa is our next meeting at 6:30. And then we will not meet again until May 21st, 2019, again in the PRNC Library. My next committee is the Homelessness Solutions Committee. And we tried to meet in January, we couldn't get quorum, so we're going to meet again in February. We always meet the first Thursday of every month. And we meet at the Pillars Cafe on the grounds of the Shepherd of the Hills Church. They have a little cafe in there. But an upcoming event that we are partnering with West Valley Alliance on is going to be February 16th at the Granada Hills Charter High School. And at February 16th, that's a Saturday, I believe it's going to be from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock. We're going to have a forum. And I'm just going to kind of read you the press release. Are you frustrated over the homeless crisis? Do you want to know what is being done about it? Come to our public homelessness forums held in various parts of the West Valley and learn about current solutions being enacted. Meet the city and county agencies, nonprofits, housing developers, religious institutions, and social workers who are trying to help fix this crisis. They will be available to answer your questions and concerns about homelessness. So our first one was in December in Woodland Hills. It was very successful. And again, this one is February 16th at Granada Hills High School. So I hope they all attend that. It'll be on our Facebook page. We'll have a lot of information about that on Facebook. And my third is the ad hoc Aliso Canyon Fence Line Committee. That's not going to meet again until after the proposed consent decree is finalized. That was a lawsuit. Oh, let me back up. The purpose of the ad hoc committee was to find funding for a permanent fence line monitoring system to monitor the methane in our communities. Right now, we only have one in someone's backyard. It's independent, but it's just there by the grace of the company that's offering, right? So this proposed consent decree, part of that is $3 million to pay for an independent fence line community system around the whole community. But until the consent decree is finalized by the court, there's nothing more we can do.
Can you wrap it up?
Okay, so the court was supposed to finalize it in December, that was canceled. It was going to be January now. Supposedly the new court date is in February, we don't have a date yet. But we're not going to meet again until after that. So, that's it.
All right, thank you.
Randy.
Randy?
All right, Outreach Committee. First of all, I'd like to thank the many volunteers and wonderful people on the panel here who did a great job putting together the holiday party. We had a fantastically successful holiday party. They came in on time and under budget.
Yay!
Yay! Saved you all a lot of money. All right. Now we get to move on to other things that Outreach is going to be doing. We're going to be working on Earth Day. Apparently some town halls are going to be coming up in theory. We're also going to start this month talking about really redoing our website and stuff that we can bring to the board about that. I want to talk to my fellow Outreach Committee members as to what day they would like to have the next meeting scheduled. And any community members who want to get involved, please, 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 we would love to have you come out and be a part of it. The last thing I want to point out is when you are scheduling any of your committee meetings, tell me at least a week in advance so I can post on Facebook. Email me directly because otherwise I might not necessarily notice it in other venues. But I want to start really pushing our Facebook presence. So that's it.
Okay.
Jason.
Okay. So I wanted to make the same point that Assad made. I agree. I'd like to see this board host some kind of town hall, some kind of candidate forum, some kind of election. I think we do a great job doing that, and I think it's an important service to the community. So I'd like to bring something up at the next meeting in terms of a motion with respect to that, and we can probably talk about that at outreach. As far as education, there's a motion on there that we'll talk about. We discussed at the meeting having a town hall, so we'll talk about that later. As you know, there's a strike that's imminent at the district, so just to give you guys the latest update, they postponed it. It was supposed to be tomorrow. They postponed it till Monday. So they're still trying to negotiate in good faith on that, so just keep your eyes tuned on that. But I can say Castle Bay has a plan in place, and basically they're keeping three large groups of students, so they're breaking them up by grades, and they're keeping them in three separate large areas that they can. So it will likely be a bit chaotic. I personally will be supporting the teachers on the line, and will be sending my children to school because I feel it's important that they do need to go to school regardless of what is going on. And it's an important lesson for the children to learn how things like this work out. I attended the Community Forest Advisory Committee meeting downtown, and this is the city committee that advises on all issues pertaining to trees. It was a very good meeting. I learned a lot. There's CAL FIRE. There's a grant that was approved that they are doing an inventory of all the trees. This is an important first step. Also, Board of Public Works approved a motion to implement these things, also to organize a tree summit in 2019. Also, they're implementing a city forest officer that's going to deal with the urban forest and tree asset management. So this is a big next step, is this tree inventory. And also, there's going to be on January 23rd an event hosted by Tree People rooted in urban forestry. And then the other big thing that came out is this DUDEC report, they're calling it. This DUDEC report, basically, DUDEC is a firm that analyzed all the issues that we're dealing with the urban forestry here and made several recommendations. And so I'd like to, maybe next month, either have somebody present or I'd be willing to present on this topic because I think it's important. This is a big issue that we're having. Can I have another minute, please? Sure. One of the things I'd like to, let's see, Alex will speak a little bit about when he gets to his committee about beautification, but I'd just like to invite you to our meeting. Alex is the chair of the beautification committee, but I'd like to invite you guys because these are the types of issues that we can take on, and we have, but I think this just goes to show that we're doing a fantastic job. If this is the only, one of the main issues in our community, then, we're doing good on everything else. The street sweepers were out cleaning up the pine needles, thanks to Alex working with the leadership in the department. So I think we're doing a fantastic job. Just a couple other things. If you want to get free mulch, they have free mulch at the Van Norman Recycling Center in Granada Hills. And just one request to the president who does our agendas. Is it possible to put a new business item on our agenda in the future so that topics can be brought up that perhaps didn't make it? You don't have to answer that. Just something to think about, we have a new business item on there so that we could bring up things that we'd like to work on going forward.
Well, I'll answer it quickly. No new business can be taken action on if it's not agendized within a certain 72-hour.
Not to take action on it, but just so that we have a section where we can bring up new business.
If it's to be discussed, it needs to be agendized. If the topic is specific, but let me find out about that.
If you could look into it, I know a lot of
I'll
boards
find
do
out
it,
about that.
they have to do business. So I think that'd be helpful for us, just to, because talking about things like Earth Day, and it wasn't on the agenda, but it's something we need to work on, and we could have a brief discussion about it. So,
Okay.
That's all. Thank you so much.
Alex?
First of all, I'd like to thank that gentleman for bringing this matter to the council. We went through this last year on the other side. I drove around like yesterday. I saw all these signs on no trees. We see up Tampa, that area. I had the same problem on Rinaldi with cold waters. We took care of it last year, but I didn't go that section that much, but I saw it yesterday. And very appreciative you doing this stuff. And we'll take care of it.
My dad too.
Okay, thank you. And we have, our committee has a meeting last Tuesday of every month at PRNC Public Library at 6:30. Please come to the meeting and we'll do something. Instead of talking about, we'll do something. And with the other issue, Tampa Median Project, we are just not making any progress. Like the last month, we just wasted the whole month because we couldn't locate the water meter with the median. And from DWP, nobody gave us a kind of location of the water meter. And I'd like to ask Ron to find out where the meter is. Please help us.
Yeah, Jason and I communicated over the holidays, we kind of tentatively had a time.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're welcome to come by and figure it out.
So
Yeah.
let's find out where the meter is within a couple of days. Okay? Thank you. The other thing, maybe with some help from City 12, we can make some progress before the next one. Thank you.
Yeah.
Andrew?
Nothing.
Becky?
Nothing.
Gabriel? Nothing. And Hassan?
One topic that was brought to me by a few friends and actually stakeholders in Porter Ranch was the street racing. Apparently, it seems to be the folks I'm talking about, they live toward the end of Reseda and pretty much, from Cessna at that point on all the way. I drove by and I usually don't go up there because I don't live there, but I saw the street and it's full of tire marks. Yeah, spin out and donuts and so forth. I spoke to two individuals who wanted to come and show what they go through, and they said they these folks, they show up around 1 to 2 a.m., sometimes even up to 3 to 4 a.m. And they are like groups of cars, and usually 2 or 4. They race, they do the spin out, and they at that late at night, they heard everybody sleep, not only just probably hurting if there's somebody around, but just it is a bad situation. They wanted me to bring this point to the council, and as I just left, but something has to be done about it, because these guys are really an annoyance to the community, and it's a matter of time if some poor guy happens to be driving by that late at night, that is going to get hurt. And these people start racing down Cessna all the way toward the east. And I really felt for them, because they said like 2-3 times a week these things happen, and they lose sleep. So that's really the main topic I wanted to bring, and I hope we can do something about it. I'm not sure what. And if it's police department or city officials, but something that we'll take very seriously.
Me? All right. So I have a few things to just comment on. One is over the holiday period, I met with Supervisor Barger, and I basically went through the letter that we had sent to the PUC before that time and made the case as to why we feel, to put it bluntly, that there was a fraud committed on the community by SoCalGas and their withholding of information. It was a good meeting, it was a good session, and hopefully we will continue to work with the county supervisor towards a more concrete action on their part. I also met at the following week with the director of the Department of Public Health at the county, and we brought up the same issue about how the county is, what we need them to affirm in this debate, and I think there will be action coming out of them hopefully sooner than later. On Friday, there is a workshop in Sacramento that the Energy Commission and the PUC are putting together. It is a workshop to discuss the volatility in the gas prices in Southern California over the last month. So I am taking the day off, and I'm traveling to Sacramento to sit and listen and find out what the issues that they're going to bring up are going to be, and so that I can public comment. As part of the public comment, remind the PUC and CAC as to why we are fighting the fight that we are fighting. A couple other items. We had the first meeting of the elections committee. We have a lot of work to do. We will be meeting monthly starting in February, and we will be meeting right after the homelessness solutions meeting. And so we have a lot of planning to do, material to put out, and I'm just putting it out right now for now. empowerla.org/elections is a good website that the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment has put out for neighborhood council elections, and we're going to promote that as much as we can over the next several weeks. Thank you, Jasmine. And the neighborhood council elections is May 4th. It's not good that we're having to compete with the special elections of CD12 with the following month, but it is what it is.
We were scheduled first.
We're going to try to figure it out. So that is that. My time is up. I have one more thing to comment on. It's the rules and bylaws. We also had one meeting, and again, we did not meet over the break, but we will continue with meetings less frequently than the elections, and hopefully by the end of this fiscal year, we will come to the board with just rules, not to change the bylaws. Bylaws will be left till next year because it's a lot more formalized process. And that's all I have to report at this time.
Can I going on.
Yeah?
So, just so everybody knows, there's an HOA meeting across the hall about a series of burglaries that's happened. So we dragged out people who are part of the police CPAB group and representative from the council because they asked for people like that to come speak, and they hadn't responded. They were here, so we dragged them over. Everything's okay, but that's why there was a large group of people out there all of a sudden. So, everything's
Better
good.
food or something. Well,
Yeah,
it shouldn't, it shouldn't be like this. There's a reason everybody is in this meeting. If they want to have a neighborhood council, if they want to have an HOA meeting to discuss a topic, they shouldn't overlap with the neighborhood council meeting.
Agreed.
So I don't know why they left, so.
Well, I told the HOA we're here if they wanted to come over.
Well, but we have an agenda, we have a meeting, we have business to run. Susan, quickly,
Can I put, Jasmine, can I put you on the spot? Can you tell us about the election workshop on the 19th of people who may want to run and what information they can get from that?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jasmine O'Barber. I
Thank
work
you.
with the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. I'll just run over them. So, I try not to have my back to anyone else. Anyway, so we have a candidate workshop on Saturday, January 19th at the Marvin Browdy Center. That's in Van Nuys. Open to everyone who would like to run for a board seat in 2019 neighborhood council elections. So as was mentioned, Porter Ranch Neighborhood Council will be having an election on May 4th. If you would like to run for a board seat, this workshop would be great for you. It's great for everyone, really. I'm a little biased.
Jasmine,
Yeah.
if I may
Speak of
interrupt. We have an item on the agenda for update on NC elections for
Okay.
discussion. So I would rather wait till then.
No worries. I'll come back later and see you all on the 19th.
So regarding the meetings that you had, your meeting as a representative of Porter Ranch Neighborhood Council, correct? You met with the supervisor and the police,
I met with the supervisor and with the Department of Public Health.
So those meetings were regarding our letter, the letter that the board sent. So are you inviting other board members to come with you, or are you making them aware at all, or are you just going individually?
No, I'm going individually.
So I would ask that you maybe invite Susan or, bring another board member to the meeting. I think that's important because for transparency purposes, so people know exactly what transpires in those meetings, it's important to have two board members. That's my feeling, and I don't know, I guess you're exercising your power under a motion that was passed, which I'm not familiar with that motion. I think I was not even on the board, I guess I'm familiar with it. But can you know about it, or?
I'm not going to have a discussion about it. You have a comment to make. It's on the record. That's great, but we move on. Anything else on it?
No, I'm just wondering the motion that's authorized.
It's on the record. Okay. Next item on the agenda is item 11. So I'm going to help you set up a little bit. If you'd like to introduce yourself while I'm doing that, that'd be great. This is a presentation. If the board member wants to go to the other side, that's your choice. Or you can take it.
Good evening, everybody.
We're going to dim the lights a little bit so we have a better view.
No, I think it's not hard. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, okay. Great. Good evening, everybody, board members, stakeholders. My name is Lila Alakmesh. I've been working with the city for the past 2 years, evaluating the way the city manages its infrastructure in the public right-of-way. So you guys are free to treat, because I know somebody earlier mentioned fixing potholes and trees and sidewalks, which are important topics across the city. Oh, okay, let's do this. Okay, so I'm going to have to put this down at some point because I'm going to use my hands, but I'll try to be as loud as possible. So essentially, essentially what we're doing is, this is a 2-year study on the public right-of-way. So in Los Angeles, the public right-of-way is defined as the edge of the building on one side of the street, sidewalk, edge of the building on the other side of the street. Everything that is operating under, on, and over that space is defined in Los Angeles as a public right-of-way. So the objective of this study was threefold. So essentially it was to improve coordination among the many agencies that are working in the street. You'll see a very colorful graphic in a slide or two. The second was to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of your tax dollar payers, make sure that your tax dollars are well spent. And the third was to improve the relationship between residents and government, which is part of the reason why I'm here tonight. So before you can begin to improve, you have to know your starting point, right? So this is currently the distribution and governance of how Los Angeles manages the public right-of-way. So what you'll see on this very colorful graphic is a lot of colors. Every color is representing a different agency within the city of Los Angeles. Each of those agencies has a different department head, has a different goal, has a different set of employees, has different funding streams. So a couple of things I want to point out on this graph is that you'll see lines pointing to the asset. So for instance, you'll see BSS, which is street services, pointing to the street. You'll see like DOT, maybe on striping or parking. A lot of those lines are actually pointing to the same part of the street. So what essentially is happening is that we have programs that are operating either on top of each other, under or on the street, or over the street, and essentially we're competing with each other to execute those programs across a very limited, tight real estate space. To make it even more concrete, because you guys mentioned earlier that you actually walk in this neighborhood, which is great, more sustainable for sure, but if you actually walk across an average intersection in Los Angeles, you are crossing over 12 different programs that are completely maintained, isolated, upgraded, and funded in a silo. One hand does not know what the other hand is doing. And finally, and you can't see this very well, but across the bottom there's actually a set of different commissions. So not only are we managed and governed differently by different departments, there's actually another layer of governance which is also split up by department. So Los Angeles is essentially a mayor, council, commission form of government, which adds an extra layer of governance, and I'm going to explain why that's important. So I went through a very extensive research process, which I won't go through here, but you can see some of the points. So I talked to over 400 people within the city government, Metro, Caltrans, etc., and essentially the research led to this. So there were 6 barriers to performance in how we manage the public right-of-way. So essentially they were a lack of alignment, a lack of communication across all of these agencies, a lack of coordination, lack of focus on the customer, that's you, the constituent, lack of data and underuse of technology, and finally a lack of planning. So those are the things that are keeping Los Angeles to really be the best managed infrastructure city, if you want to call it that, in the country. And just as a point of reference, from the previous slide, I actually asked the question across 400 people, like who was actually in charge of the street? And literally the most popular answer, the number 1 answer, was no one. Number 2 is the mayor, number 3 was city council. So how we're going to manage approximately 80 different programs, we don't know who's actually driving the vision and the infrastructure plan for the city. Okay, so I'm going to give you a sneak peek. This is actually, I don't know if you can, oh, I left it over there, but there's a very thick binder that's about 400 pages of what I had to write myself. But they really boil down to 13 different recommendations, and I think it's important as the constituent and the taxpayer to understand that there's potential changes to programs that neighborhoods and constituents should know what's happening downtown. So I'm going to describe some of the recommendations here today, and it's not laid out the same way as the report because I wanted to make more concrete to the public. But essentially the 3 areas are going to be planning for the street, executing on the street, and protecting the street. So I'm going to have to put this down for a second. So bear with me, I'll try to project as much as I can.
So, in Los Angeles, if you imagine my arm, if you can't hear me, you like raise your hand in the back. Okay, so in Los Angeles, this is the public right-of-way, right? This is my arm, this is the street, the sidewalk. There are pipes under the street like sewers, there are telecom, there's SoCal gas, etc. There's the street itself, which is striping, parking, pavement, sidewalks. And then you have programs living on top of the street like street trees, street lights, you have bus shelters, etc. The majority of those programs in Los Angeles are under the Department of Public Works. Above the Department of Public Works is the Board of Public Works. So this is the public right-of-way and how it's defined in our city charter. The biggest intersection or the biggest overlap between people who are using and need to access The street is transportation. It's striping, it is signals, it is signage, it is multimodal transportation, it is parking. All of those things need to operate where? On top of infrastructure. So a lot of the signals, the walk signals, are attached to street lights, which are part of the Department of Public Works. Multimodal transportation operates in our streets. Pedestrians are walking on sidewalks, which is a Public Works asset. Now, the difference in Los Angeles, which is different than any other top 10 city in the country, is that even though we recognize this relationship, this is by default something we understand, Los Angeles actually manages the public right-of-way like this. Right? So remember the colorful graph? So we have a Department of Public Works, governed by a Board of Public Works, and then we have a Department of Transportation, governed by a Transportation Commission and a Taxi Commission. So why is that important? Why am I bringing it up? Because, and I'll show you just here, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but there are any number of intersections between these departments. These parts of programs are going on every single day. We're making changes to our striping. We're altering our parking. We're expanding where there might be car sharing. We are having grant projects that are living in many different departments. We're putting in bike lanes. And through all of them, the communication and coordination, which are two barriers to performance, are affecting the way we manage the public right-of-way. Because we might believe that the street looks like this, and it actually might look, at the end, like something different. So let me give you guys a hypothetical. Switch back to this now so I don't have to straighten my voice. How long have you waited for maybe 20 years to get a street paved, right? Maybe you guys have worked really hard. All of the streets, we have the nation's largest street network in the country. And then, okay, let me back up actually. So let's say, and this is personally one of my pain points, left turn signals. So a lot of places you block traffic because you're waiting in the intersection and traffic has to go around. So you work with transportation to get a dedicated left turn signal or a left turn lane. So they come through and restriped it. 3 months later, what happens? That street is on the list to actually be maintained, either slurry sealed or resurfaced. What happens? Department of Public Works comes through, they pave over the new striping. What happens to happen next? We've got to come and restripe it, right? Safety issue. So we wasted money twice. That's because of lack of communication, lack of coordination, no access to the data, and no transparency. Does that make sense? So the recommendation actually in the city is to try to facilitate better governance by creating overlap with our multi-mobility plan and to make sure that infrastructure is embedded in that planning process. So as you can see at the bottom, kind of, there's a Public Works Board, right? Public Works, and we have Taxi Commission and Transportation Commission. The Board of Public Works by charter is the only full-time board in the city. It meets 3 times a week, approximately 24 hours a month. You have a dedicated commissioner right now for this area that you can call 5 days a week. Now I'm going to vary that, I'm going to kind of contrast that with what is in Transportation. Transportation Commission and Taxi Commission meet once a month. I went to those meetings, let me tell you how long they lasted. 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 9 minutes, 10 minutes, 11 minutes, 6 minutes. I missed one because I was 5 minutes late. You guys meeting tonight are the equivalent of about maybe an entire year's worth of meetings. In those meetings, not once, if you think about things that bother you about congestion and traffic in Los Angeles, do they discuss speed bumps, vision zero, pedestrian safety, signals, left turn signals, anything you can think of, parking, are never discussed in those meetings. So, how do we repair that relationship? How do we strengthen our oversight? Well, essentially, the report recommends transferring the limited functions that Transportation Commission and Taxi Commission do to the Board of Public Works, which is a full-time entity. You guys now have access 3 times a week, 12 times a month to that, to the Public Works Board, and essentially we are creating accountability for the first time between people who maintain the street, Public Works, which is sidewalk and pavement, hardscape, and the people that are making transportation changes on top of our streets. We have never had cross accountability ever in the city's history for the city and multimodal transportation. Essentially, it would help us create, remove the backlog of $500 million in grant projects, which are sitting right now. It would help prevent us undoing and redoing each other's work, and it would advance project delivery in terms of grant projects, streetscape projects, et cetera, that are sitting right now in a queue because we cannot facilitate that across all of these agencies. So that's a key recommendation. So I spent the most time on that because it's kind of complex with the governance, but I wanted you guys to kind of a better sense of how complicated that is. Okay, the second one, I just mentioned we have the nation's largest street network. So essentially this is what we do. We have 28,000 lane miles in Los Angeles.
We have utilities that, again, remember, there's pipes under the street. Right now, what happens is that someone will cut into the street, or they will tell us they're planning to come to the street via permit. We will try not to pave the street, because that's the worst thing in the world, is that you have a brand new blacktop street and someone cuts into it 6 months later, right? We want to prevent doing that. Every time the city paves a street, I'm going to talk about resurfacing, it's approximately or up to $500,000. Every time someone cuts into the street, potentially we reduce the life of the street by 20 to 50%, depending on the age of the street and how the condition of the street is. So we decided in the recommendations that I benchmarked the top 25 cities in the country is to modernize, we should actually get a system, right? So we should be able to upload SoCal Gas plans. We should upload the city's resurfacing plan and be able to see exactly what's going on. We should not be piecemealing together 200 utility partners by hand on Excel trying to figure out what's happening in the city. That's essentially what's going on. And just to give you an idea, if we upgraded the system, and I did benchmark against other cities, you'll see some examples there of just how much money is being saved. Chicago's had a system for 4 years. It has saved over $140 million to date. And that's because we can tell when someone's going to cut into the street, and so we can actually look at 3 or 4 people that might want to cut into the street at the same time, right? Because there's just not gas lines, there might be telecom lines crisscrossing over, and so we're cutting the street once instead of 5 times in a row. That helps preserve the street much longer. So there's some samples, $45 million Boston, 3.5 in Seattle, and that was just 6 months of having the system. They're at multi-year $1 million now. 311, everybody knows what 311 is? Please let me know. Okay, you guys are sure, okay. Have you guys ever used 311 and it had a request closed without anything happening to it? Yes, I'm seeing nodding heads. Yes. You guys probably don't know this. 311 was essentially a public works system until about spring this year. Every single one of those 50 categories, other than other, was essentially a public works category. What you guys may not also realize is that we actually take in requests as a city for unfunded programs and pre-funded programs. So what that means is pre-funded program is resurfacing. We have a plan in the city through the mayor's administration, which is the most aggressive that we've had in history, 2,400 miles every single year that is treated for maintenance. That program, every single projected street across every single council district, we know that list July 1, every single year. So if you go in, you can put in a resurfacing request. It's going to get closed immediately because the money has already been fully allocated, and that program is just not flexible enough to move the equipment for ad hoc requests. So I would recommend if you guys do have requests, you should work with your council office on that one. But we also have unfunded requests. So we also have a lot of trees in the city. We were talking about trees earlier that need trimming. We just do not have the resources at this point in time, although we are rebuilding, to go to the tree trimming cycle that we'd like to. So those, unless it's a tree emergency where your house is about, or tree's about to fall on your car or your house, we simply just don't have the resources at the time. So that also will get closed immediately. So now imagine, and I'm just gonna stick with resurfacing. So I just told you some insider information, right? Like you guys didn't know that we don't look at resurfacing. Yeah. So we actually, if we put in a resurfacing request, imagine if you actually now get a pop-up message that says, thank you for your interest in addressing a street that needs to be maintained. Here's a link, click on the link, and you can see all of the projected list of streets in the city. That's a better communication tool, and that's upgrading 301 to a 2.0 version that's better for the street. So I've talked about this a little bit. I was talking about development in the city, which is going at a very rapid pace. So essentially, remember I said, I'm gonna put this down for a second, I'm sorry.
Put it on the stand. I'm finishing. Put it on the stand. Oh. You're so smart. That's why he's present. I didn't have this at the other. Can you hear me?
Did it work?
Yes.
Okay. Try to do this without long. Okay, so imagine, remember I said my arm's a street. So what happens is that, let's say development goes up here, right? That development at a minimum, like you can see on the screen, has to connect to power, water, electricity, gas, telecom. 5 of these connections. Those connections are not neatly put in right in front of the development. They might crisscross and go in many different directions. So again, the development might be here, but we might cut the street here. That means, remember I said that this street, like a major street in Los Angeles is supposed to be 20 years, a residential street is designed to last 30 years, with normal wear and tear. But now if we're cutting the street, that's not built in. So if we're cutting the street 5 times, remember I said, you're gonna lose half the life of that street. And we simply don't have the resources to get back to that street sooner rather than later. So the ideal thing is to program the development here, with the data, and so we know not to pave that street ahead of time. So what happens is, we have 11,000 cuts in the street every single year across the city. So remember, I did the math there? So if we do slurry seal, it's about $70,000. Every street is about $500,000. If we actually do full reconstruction, this is a street, there's about 2 or 3 inches of asphalt. Underneath the street is a concrete base that's supporting the weight, or a base of some kind. When you cut into the street, you cut into the asphalt, you cut into the support base of the street, and the pipes are underneath. If the vendor or the utility does not refill that spot to the proper compaction, it will sink in the year. It will do this. So what happens then? You guys are going to call 311 and say there's a pothole there. It's not a pothole, it's a trench. So the good thing is that we do have a 5-year warranty on the books for issued a remedy to repair. We don't have enough inspectors. We literally have 14 inspectors for the entire city. That's less than 1 per council district. So 11,000 cuts, 14 inspectors to do the math. So again, we have to think about enforcement, because it doesn't make any sense to spend $500,000 if we can't reinforce the street itself, right? Okay, so I think that's actually the last one that I was going to say, so I think I got it right in time. I want to close by saying this. If you imagine again my arm to be the street, if we do not in the future address those 6 barriers to performance, sort of the planning, the alignment, the coordination, the linking of the data, the focus on the customer, this asset, which is the largest taxpayer-funded asset that the city owns, that you own, it's never going to meet its full potential to be a vibrant, sustainable, accessible, safe asset. It's never going to be able to do that. We have to establish a vision for it. We have to address those barriers to performance. And we have to make sure that whatever purpose and however the streets look like in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever that looks like with cars, without cars, that we are managing to your expectations. The only way to do that is try to implement some of these recommendations. So thanks for bearing with me. Hopefully that was educational, and hopefully I didn't talk too fast.
Thank you. We have 5 minutes. We'd like to keep the 5 minutes for Q&A. So I'll open the floor. Who wants to ask a question? Jason, you had a question, and then the lady had a question.
It's a question about what you were just talking about, how like they cut into the streets. So I know that there was an audit of SoCal Gas done a while back, and they found, regarding the franchise agreement, and they found that the city was not getting properly reimbursed. They were getting off cheap, essentially, not doing, I don't know. Can you elaborate more on what were the next steps taken by the city, and what can be done in terms of inspectors? It's very disappointing to know that inspectors aren't out there checking that the concrete base is fixed, and I see those same problems. We have this problem actually right outside of Porter Ranch Estates. There was a big sinkhole, and that's. Seems like what you're talking about.
The trenches are pretty obvious. If you guys look, and if the color of the pavement's not the same color, if it's a long rectangular thing, it's usually going to be a trench if there's a pothole in it. So you can tell, and you can report that to 311, so we can specifically send an inspector to that location. That way you can get them to respond. I won't pick on SoCal Gas, but I'll just say in general what we've done for enforcement. So there was something, we were the first in the country to do this. It's called SDRF, Street Damage Restoration Fee, SDRF. That was installed as a price to cut into the taxpayer-funded asset to extend the life. So when you do cut into the street, there is a formula depending on the size of the street and the grade of the street, and then there's a fee. That fee was in late 90s. It was updated once in 2006. It's 12 years later, and so obviously it didn't build in an inflation factor at that point. It was just a standard. So we were basically operating on 2006 budget. But just recently, I want to say just November, December, there was an update to the SDRF, and now we are beginning to price the permits and the cuts the right way. So the city has moved on that. So I think that's a very positive direction. On average, it's about $10 to $12 million that historically the city was collecting, and now it's going to like quadruple. Just because, again, if you think about the pavement, the development in the city and how many cuts it's going to prove, so if that's helpful. Yeah. And just to give you a reference point for the inspectors, we have 14 for utilities specifically. There are other inspectors in the city, of course. New York, by contrast, I think has over 100.
Thank you. Ma'am, please.
Yeah, I have a question regarding what you were talking about, the pipes going this way and that way. So my question is there a blueprint that shows this is the direction of the pipes, or how do you get that direction?
So the city does hold underground maps for different parts of the city. Sometimes they're not always accurate, and so either a utility or a city agency might believe a pipe is here, but when you cut into it, it actually might be like 5 feet over, right? So that needs to be a whole separate process in terms of taking an active inventory, and obviously with the new development going up, there's new pipes being connected right and left, right? So it's somewhat a guessing game. There are areas that are more accurate than others, and there are parts of the city that are older than others, right? So right now there is a map that we use, but it's not always accurate.
So how deep is the pipes that you're talking about compared to the surface of the city?
Yeah, it depends, because we have traffic controls that are like much closer, because it's sensing if a car is there to trap the signal. But then the sewer pipes, or a gas line, you don't want that near the surface where someone might cut into it. You want it much deeper, right? And that's what causes the cuts when we go all the way down. So if we want to give access to utilities that have assets, because we all need gas, we all need to flush the toilet, the sewer needs to take the waste away somewhere. So that's why some of the pipes are much deeper than others. So there's not an exact blueprint in the city, though, of like what is the deepest and what is near the top. It just depends, because if you're on a major street, like, I don't know, the Wilshire or something in the city, so you imagine like a street, there's maybe 12 homes that are feeding into a bigger pipe, which is going to a bigger pipe. Some of them are bigger than me. I mean, they might be like 5, 7, 8 feet tall. Yeah, and bigger, yeah. No, they can be quite big.
Thank you. Gentlemen?
Consolidation authority into DPW. When is that going to happen? The consolidation authority, transportation, other departments under DPW, is that just a recommendation, or is it actually going to happen?
Yeah, so it's a recommendation. So obviously governance is tricky because you can do it a lot of different ways. Some people say, well, let's just put transportation in part of public works and that'll solve it. But really, public works is the third largest department in the city. You're making a big department bigger. So essentially at this point, the data and the research didn't show that some kind of mashup like that is necessary. We just need the governance. We need the accountability. We don't have accountability. So what needs to happen is basically an ordinance needs to be changed via city council. It doesn't cost any money to do it. Actually, most of these recommendations don't cost money. So yeah, it's going through the legislative process now.
All right. Lila, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we're coming on a break, and we have a cake for everybody because we have 2 birthdays on the board that happen to coincide with January meeting.
first here.
So we're on a break. Francis, you know that. And gentlemen, floor is yours for 10 minutes.
All right, Francis, are you on? Okay. Item 12 on the agenda. I'd like to get going on the motion. Andrew, this is yours.
Item 12, discussion and possible motion to approve the MPG application submitted by Castle Bay Lane Elementary School in the amount of $2,500.
Oh, I have to repeat myself.
Yeah, I was going to ask why I have you out. Anybody else have this?
Okay, David, would you please step up and make your case, and I'm going to have 3 minutes on the clock. Can you do that? Oh, you want less?
Good evening. My name is David Garner. This is the principal at Castle Bay Lane. As you know, or as you may not know, last year I came to help, and you helped us get our XIQ program started. You know, had a lot of enthusiasm, and through your support, we were able to get 2 robots 2 playing fields, the material, the game, and use part of it for some of the registration fees at some of the events. So far, one of our teams at our first competition got first place. Won 2 awards and is already qualified for the state finals in March. The other team was only 2 points away, so I'm working with that team to try to pump them up. And so our objective is at least to get the first 2 teams, I got one going, to the state finals in March in Pasadena. Going forward, our plan, and also to expand the STEM team at Castle Bay, we're looking to go to 4 teams for next school year. But right now, there's a gigantic lead time for materials from the VEX. So we're at this time to perhaps start funding the, fund the purchasing, start getting the equipment, so we'll be ready to go come spring on our tryouts, and have a 4 team competitions, or 4 teams at Castle Bay for the 1920 school year. Also, on February 16th, we are hosting we're hosting a tournament for 24 teams from Pasadena to Santa Barbara all the way to Orange County. So if you're in the area, you're more than welcome to attend. So $2,500 would be seed money, and yes, we are. We will all have other co-sponsors of the fund, and we've all, as far as publication, we have a banner right up as you walk into Castle Bay Lane. STEM Team, VEX IQ, co-sponsored by Puerto Ranch Neighborhood Council. So, are there any questions I can answer at this time?
Any questions from the board? And then I'm
Thank you, Gabriel.
Have you opened up the program to kids that are not in Castle Bay, or it's only for Castle Bay stuff?
Right now, because the way we have it structured, it is for students for Castle Bay, because we have 1 teacher that helps supervise, myself, who helps supervise, Dr. G, the principal, who helps supervise. So right now, we're limiting it to students of Castle Bay Lane, because of the logistics, because of security, and we just don't know all kids coming onto the campus.
Any other questions?
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Or just
Go ahead.
it'll be quick.
Sure.
I just want to say I really love this idea. When we built this school, one of the things we wanted was an industrial arts program. And you look into putting one in, there's not industrial arts teachers. It's so important for people to learn to work with their brains and their hands. And I really love this program, and if we can't have industrial arts, we have this, and it's teaching them a lot of the same things and how to use their brains.
Well, thank you. And also, I'm personally a witness. We have a young lady that is a sophomore in high school. She comes over on her own time and helps coach the young students, especially the ladies. I have witnessed, now this is subjective, but her coach at high school has commented to us how much she has grown herself by, when she talks to young kids, they recognize her as the older kid, and then it's getting her confidence when she talks and interacts and proposes her ideas with her peers. So
I have a question for you. It's a little concern, and I want to ask you if you thought about it. It would be good, I'll make it as a comment, it would be good to have a plan in place to make this program sustainable on its own as much as possible. Because I'm concerned that, if funding goes down from something like this, is that going to affect your ability to sustain the teams?
no, once we have the equipment, the only thing changes from year to year is the game itself, which is $100, $9.95. And then some, when we continue to look for other sponsors, and other grants too.
Yeah, just sustaining the program is critical as part of the planning.
Once you buy the hardware and the brain, just replace it for anything else.
Any other questions from the board? Any public comment, question for the gentleman? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. We had a discussion. Will there be a motion?
I make a motion to approve the MPG application submitted by Castle Bay Lake Elementary School in the amount of $2,500.
Okay, we have a Cooper for a second from Becky and Hassan. And any further discussion? Without any further discussion, call the vote. I'm sorry, just a second.
I was just going to point out that between the savings on the holiday party and not doing some other events this year, we should be covered with this, so it shouldn't be a big hit.
All right, David, absent, Hassan.
Yes.
Susan.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Jason, Hughes. Andrew, yes. Randy.
Yes.
Becky.
Yes.
Assad. Absent. Gabriel, yes. Isam.
Yes.
And motion passes.
Thank you. Congratulations. And there you go.
Thank you.
Don't worry about it. Can somebody get it?
I got it.
Okay, item, what's my agenda?
13 elections.
Item 13, PRNC elections update for technical role activities. As I mentioned, the Dunn website is rich with information about all the questions that people have, but Jasmine, you're itching to talk about it, so please.
Quite the introduction, thank you.
Jasmine the Itchy.
As mentioned, the website is rich with information, so I do encourage you all to check it out. But in all seriousness, the workshop is a great opportunity to learn about what it means to be a candidate. Also, there's a very cute video online on YouTube. It's all animated, and we're really proud of it collectively as a department. It's really worth the 3 minutes and 13 seconds of your precious attention span to dedicate to this video. But it sort of explains the neighborhood council system, what it means to be a candidate, and why you should get involved. So at the candidate workshop on the 19th at Marvin Browdy in Van Nuys in the morning, 10 to 12, I believe is the time. They'll be taking workshop participants through the candidate filing process. So please RSVP on the website because space is limited, as each person will have a computer to go through the process. And then in the afternoon, there is another elections workshop for women that is specific to women. It's an Ignite LA workshop, and it is focused on helping women go through their leadership styles, strengths-based planning, and there are some men who are upset about this, so we are happy to create a workshop that is for everyone who wants to discover their leadership style and practice strengths-based planning, but it is a mayoral directive to focus on gender equity and achieve gender parity in boards on a city level and on a neighborhood council level. So that is the reason for creating women-specific programs, but we are here for everyone. And so, yeah, that is essentially what I have to say about elections. Are there any questions? Yes.
Where is the women's?
It's on the same day. It's in the same place, Marvin Browdy. It's in the afternoon from 1 to 3. And
there are also other Ignite workshops. One will be in Mission Hills as well. That'll be the second one in the Valley. And then they're rotating throughout the city, as are the other candidate workshops.
Can you send me this stuff so I can post it on Facebook?
Yes,
Thank you.
no problem.
Did the registration, candidate registration window open?
Yours has not opened yet. It will open on, I have the dates. Give me 1 second.
The seats occupied by Andrew, Jason, Hassan, Alex, and Dave.
Thank you.
Did you want those?
Bear with me while it moves.
You're not gonna get service here, I don't think.
I download everything.
Oh, there you go.
I'm prepared for Porter Ranch.
Yeah, ours says candidate filing period 31 days starts on January 19th, at the same time as the workshop.
Perfect.
That's the period. It's a month starting January 19th to February 19th. This is the done generated calendar.
Yes. I apologize that not all the dates are
That's it.
here.
Okay. You have a lot of neighborhoods.
Thank you.
And we'll put Brand will put the information on our Facebook page, our Porter Ranch Facebook page, so yes.
Thank you for putting the due date report on your emails. That was the only place I could find it, was
Oh,
on
really?
Power LA, so
Okay,
kudos to you guys.
thank you.
Quick question, what happens if we don't have enough candidates to fill all 5 seats?
Then we should talk about some outreach strategies to engage more candidates to run for those seats and make it a competitive election.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I guess we'll find out if we have 5 candidates. Okay.
And just a note on elections outreach, I am available to do Neighborhood Council 101s.
We will need that,
Yes.
and the committee's going to be calling you to organize that for us.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a given. Also, when you have a new board for a retreat/orientation. But also what we're, the reason I bring that up and offer that is because if you know of a nonprofit, like we all know people, right? So if you know of a great candidate or people that are working on things and their mission is already aligned with what you're trying to achieve here, bringing them into the fold, we as a department, I'm happy to go to the organization and just give like a neutral presentation on what neighborhood councils are, what they do, how to get involved. And so that is what I mean by NC 101. So if you know of a nonprofit that could benefit from that, or any organization, like a chamber of commerce, like whatever, I'm happy to come out and do that. A school, yeah. Yes.
I mean, so we can kind of brainstorm and say, could you go to the fire department in town and tell them about it? Could you go to the schools? Could you go to the senior apartments over there? I mean, you
Yeah.
can go to all these places and give your spiel. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I block all my Mondays for that. So Mondays, that's where I am, because Mondays are the only night of the week that I never have an NC meeting. So that's where that's what I'm, so like January's already full. I have one at the school next week, I have one at UCLA at the end of the month, so, but February is open right
You're
now.
very popular, you're booking it fast, so we better get it together.
Happy to help.
Yeah. Since you're the government, are you allowed to do political organizations?
Yeah, I mean, we're presenting neutral information and we are,
So you're permitted?
yeah.
There's a HOA president's group still going on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a large outreach, actually to all the HOAs.
That's another example, yeah. And this is really helpful too, because as a department, I mean, we all have to get a certain, like, we're trying to spread the word as much as possible and engage folks where we can and meet people where they are. Because a lot of people still don't know.
Right,
I think also to find a group of adults that are part of the community and, have a stake in the community is PA meetings.
Parents.
The Parents Association means that.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you have, if you, my ask would be if you could introduce me to books.
We will.
Yeah, that way I can set up a time with them. It doesn't have to be a Monday, I'm just saying in general, like I dedicate my Mondays to that.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Let's do it first.
Any other question from the board or from the public?
And does it have to be a Monday, because there's...
No.
Okay.
Just a word on the workshops there, we have candidate filing forms and information readily available in other languages, in Spanish and Korean and Mandarin, so yeah, really trying to engage as many people as we can in the process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item 14, this was asked by the board vice president.
Yes, that's me.
So would you like to lead us into that?
Sure, so the government fiscal year is July 1st through June 30th, right? And so we're kind of halfway through our year. And so I thought it might be a good time to review what our plans are from January through June 30th of our major activities that we're going to be doing. Whatever those are. And I guess the outreach can take a look.
I would like to propose that when we have our outreach meeting, I can update this and bring it to the board next round of presentation rather than kind of spending the hour that it'll take to go through this.
So we do have one scheduled, though. Can we vote to do Earth Day on April 13th?
We didn't vote.
We didn't already agree to do that, no?
We agreed to do it in the outreach when we discussed it.
Oh, okay, so the board meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're talking about when we did the calendar at the retreat?
No, like, so back before the restructuring of the outreach for like a third or fifth time, whatever it's been, when it was the Sam and Susan and I, we had a calendar approved that included the Earth Day. So the original calendar was already approved. We had to go over a new one with you guys.
It's not board approved, it's a...
Right, it was outreach. It was outreach.
It had a specific date of April 13th.
And why didn't it come to the board next?
Because the 2 months after that had really full agendas and it didn't get fit into the agendas. So instead, I picked out specific things like the holiday party needed immediate approval. So it's rather than the whole calendar being shoved in, it was going to be a long point on the agenda. It's been piecemeal. That's why.
So I'm just watching to really start getting that birthday stuff going because the permit process
Agreed.
and everything is very difficult, and I know I'm just going to be in charge of it. So.
Thank you. Yeah, and we'll do outreaches. Earth Day this week as the top priority for the next outreach meeting, which is why I said I wanted to talk about when we can schedule it.
The other purpose of this point was also to give other board members the opportunity in a public meeting to, if they have something that they want to make sure happens in this calendar here, this is the time to bring it up. I know it's supposed to happen at the retreat, but better late than never. So if there's anything that you don't think someone is thinking about that you want us to consider, make sure you bring it out.
I'll reiterate what I said earlier. I'd like to see us do a debate for the Council District 12 seat, 14th that's coming up, and I'm kind of challenged because I believe you're running and David is running, so you would have to, I guess, seek advice from the city attorney, potential recusal. So I think it's something that could be brought to the board, perhaps, or I don't know if you want to bring it to committee, but I'd like to see us host that type of forum.
I mean, there's three of us on outreach, so I'll recuse myself on anything having to do with that in the committee. And then it'd be, if you guys vote on it being in, it'd be part of the full calendar, and I can walk out.
That's fine, you'll have to bring it to committee this time.
Yeah.
So what roughly a month are you looking at?
I'm not sure, but.
Because you got Earth Day in April,
Yeah.
and the elections in June.
Maybe in May. I mean, I'm just thinking.
Yeah.
And then education.
I would also suggest if anybody comes up with any ideas, email me and I can bring them up in the committee meeting to talk about.
Yeah, this is just an opportunity that I'm not trying to do outreaches.
You know what?
Work, but I mean, it's a good to bring it up so the whole board has a say, because we can't all be at the outreach committee because that would be a quorum and then that would break law, so.
No, I was just gonna say, I think we need to tread very carefully if you're not gonna recuse yourself in the conversation.
I can.
No, I don't know if you need to, but just let's be real
Oh,
careful.
we're not taking any action.
Okay.
It's just a discussion.
Just discussion, because again, we only have 6 months left to spend on the money and to plan the calendar. That's what this is about.
Okay.
And we'll be talking about the education town hall, that's another. I didn't like the idea. The education committee wanted to have the education town hall, so we'll talk about that later, it's on the agenda. It was part of the calendar.
All right. Anything else on the calendar that needs to be discussed now?
Can I just say something about Earth
Yes.
Day? As you may know, I work with a lot of youth and like our youth programming in the department, and a lot of our Valley students, like a disproportionately high number, like live in Porter Ranch. I don't know, I know why. I have a good relationship with Cleveland High School because that's where I went, so a lot of their students, anyway, whatever. The point is, for Earth Day, if you need volunteers, if you need hands, I think there might be like a good opportunity there.
Yes.
To collaborate, so just keep me in the loop in the planning stages so that I can bring the students into the fold, because students are super busy and they've got homework and just activities, so like I gotta kind of.
I will email you.
Yeah.
We do need hands.
Yes.
We need somebody to work on the permit, there's a lot of work involved in Earth Day, and Susan did a lot of it last time, and so.
Only because we didn't have outreach up and running. Because this is an outreach event, so.
We need help from the board to do a lot of these tasks. It's very important if we want to have this event. We need commitment from the board.
I'd also like to point out, anybody can submit a suggestion. Anybody can email Randy Grace at PRNC.org and suggest an event that he can bring to the outreach committee to discuss adding to calendar. So it's not just us dictating what happens, this is your board.
Okay. All right, let's move on then to item 15.
This is the motion to recommend to the City of Los Angeles Recreation and Parks Department that the new 50-acre park be named Porter Ranch Community Park, and the pavilion be named Porter Pavilion, and include a fixed marquee and/or display or plaque with some historical background about the founders of Porter Ranch and surrounding areas.
Never Cupid.
Okay. So I got from this book, the San Fernando book, San Fernando Valley book. It's a bunch of the history of the valley, the map of the whole valley area from 1870 to 1910, and it was.
Do we need to have a second in order to go on, or?
Oh,
that part of
oh
the
yeah, I'm
motion?
sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, I think we.
You made a motion?
Yeah, okay, sorry, I made a motion. That's correct. Thank
Is
you.
there a second?
Second.
Andrew second. Okay.
Okay, so I just want to give a little background about the historical portion of it. So the original, during the 1870s and 1910, George Porter and Ben Porter owned much of the land that is in the North San Fernando Valley area, and McClay owned more in the San Fernando area. So the idea behind, and then going back to the community park, calling it Porter Ranch Community Park. We have Porter Ranch Community School from you know, I think it's important to have the name Porter Ranch in the name of the park because it says where the park is located at. So that's a big, important thing to have. And then I think community is an important thing to show that this really is for everybody in the community, wherever you live. And the other thing I wanted to say was that the historic component is very important. I think that we have a great opportunity now to, you know, history gets lost in a lot of ways. And I think, like, for example, Chatsworth Park South has a nice, you know, they have a historical society. And I think this is a great opportunity to take, to bring a historical element to the park so people can not only go there, but they can maybe learn something. So this is simply a recommendation that would be going to Recs and Parks, and I'm happy to go to the meeting and share with them our recommendation for the board should the board approve that. So I think that's
Just say, before we have any discussion, I'm opening the floor for public comment on this motion. So who wants to make a comment on it? Sir, would you please come up to the mic and then you can follow him.
Good evening, members. Happy New Year to you all. Hello. First of all, I wanted to say that I'm in complete favor with the recommendation, but I have more questions actually than suggestions. I went to a hastily called public meeting back on November the 16th by the council office. Very few people attended. And what we were told at that meeting and called to our attention that there was a news story in the Daily News back on October the 10th, and they've already named the park Bloom Park. And then also, there was a motion at the Board of Public Works to name this park Bloom Park. And so my question was for me to be attending that meeting on the 16th. Why were they calling this meeting? It was at 4 o'clock on a Friday during the holidays. I mean, I thought that was a very poor time to be called on the 16th, to be calling this meeting, and I brought it to the council members' attention. And also, where was the public comment period for the naming of this park? And so I had, other members had spoke up and they said that they wanted Porter Ranch in the name of the park, and the council member said that you can't call Porter Ranch because there already is a Porter Ranch Park. Which is true. It's actually the same park as the Holly Burnson Park. It's the other half of the park. That's the address. If you look at the address, it's the Holly Burnson, the little buildings that are there, but there's no signage and never has been any signage. So my recommendation would just take that name off that park that never had any signage of anyway, because everybody knows it as the Holly Burnson Memorial Park, and call this park Porter Ranch Park. I just said Porter Ranch, but Porter Ranch Community Park makes a lot of sense. Then we learned that the Board of Public Works wanted to have a couple of meetings in November and December, and I wrote them a very stern email letting them know that, first of all, these meetings that you're calling during the day when people cannot attend, and the fact that any hastily called meeting in November and December would interfere with people's holiday plans, people are out of town. If you're looking for the poorest amount of participation, that's how you go about doing it, if that was your game plan. So I got an email back that they're not going to have any meetings. But anyway, so now they call the meeting and now it's Monday and people already have been given notice of it. So I guess the question is this a fait accompli and they're going to name it that park anyways, or is it truly open to the public? Thank you.
I just wanted to propose the name, the same, just simple, Porter Ranch Park. It would be clear, easy to remember, the sign would be shorter, it would be just simple. I just like the name of Porter Ranch Park, that's it.
Thank you. Okay, board discussion, and I'm going to ask that everybody every board member makes a comment and we move on, or we don't want to have to go through too much debate, so I'll do my best.
The first letter of your first name.
All right, how about everybody gets 2 times? Start and respond, and let's do that. Go ahead.
I would like the board to consider the name George M. Porter Park. I think if we want to honor the history of this area, I think actually going all the way, okay, and using the gentleman's name would be truly the way to honor his memory and the heritage of this area of the valley.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, did we have a land use meeting to discuss this? And how did you come up with the name? Was it just you and David, or did you talk to other board members, or how did we get
It
this
came up
plan?
at the land use meeting, yes, and we talked about coming up with a recommendation at the board level of community park.
Did the land use committee vote on it?
No, it was under board member comments, so we didn't have vote. But it's a time-sensitive issue because you have the hearing coming up.
Yeah, but the groundbreaking ceremony, if my memory serves me correctly, was the first Friday of November. And we're past the first Friday in January, which is 2 months. It seems that if this was an important issue, we should have had a community meeting and asked for the input of all the community, not just 2 people who have their name on the motion. That's just my point. I think it should have been more outreach, and we had plenty of time.
I like Porter Ranch Community Park, I think that's a nice name, that's my opinion. My big concern when we talk about history or naming after individuals or putting up anything is whether or not there's been enough vetting on the background of historical founders to make sure that there's nothing that's going to really upset our community. I mean, have we checked to make sure they didn't have like a child slave or something? Just some kind of vetting I would like to see happen before we recommend something involving a name. That's all.
Okay.
I totally agree with, I like both names honestly, Porter Ranch Community Park as well as George M. Porter Park. I definitely like the new potential name given to the pavilion because Englander's name has absolutely no rights to be on the park. How's that? To be nice about it. So I'm pro this because it is a Porter Ranch park, it is a community park, and I think Porter Ranch should be proud of their own park, not name it Bloom or Happy or whatever they want to call it in the future. And also, whatever happens now with the name of the park, I have talked to a couple of other candidates that are running for CD12, and the name can be changed in the future just in case if whatever happens in the next few months. Let's say they stick with Bloom Park, but whoever wins the elections can change the name later, so I'll be it.
In my opinion, I like the Porter Ranch Community Park, and I don't have a problem with going with that name because we're not necessarily naming it after a person, we're naming it after a community. If there's a problem with the name, the entire community name has problems. So this is Porter Ranch, this is a Porter Ranch Community Park. I don't see any challenges with that, regardless of the history upon which the entire community was named. However, I disagree with my fellow board member about the name of the pavilion. I believe Councilman Englander's career stands a significant part of the growth of this community, and this park was conceived and agreed to under his leadership of CD12. God knows I've had disagreements with him on issues of traffic studies, issues of different things, but in my opinion, I would be more than happy with the pavilion having been named on it to retain the fact that this entire park came together under his leadership at CD12. So the way the motion is written now, I don't like it in that sense, and I would ask that it be modified to just comment on the Quarter Ranch Community Park. I think everybody's behind that idea as a park. The pavilion is a different issue, and that's, I hate to vote no on the motion because of that one. Go ahead.
I'll go. I just want to address some of the different points that are made. Bye, Devin. So going back to what the gentleman was saying about the timeline of how the events happened. So he said October 10th it was named Bloom Park. And then, so we were under the impression that it was going to be named Bloom Park. So what changed was that the public meeting that you were mentioning came about regarding naming of the park. So that led us to believe that they were no longer going to name it Bloom Park. So that's why action wouldn't have been appropriate back in October, because it was sold as a done deal. This was already done. The public works motion was done, et cetera, et cetera. So that's, and it was really the public meeting that Rex and Parks was holding that brought me to bring the motion forward in anticipation of that meeting. So I wanted to have the board take a position, whether, there's a lot of good ideas. I somewhat agree with a lot of what's being said. As far as the vetting of the history, the way that the motion is written, the historical background would be done by Rex and Parks. We're not going to be doing that. So they would be responsible for implementation of those things, if they do it. We're just making a recommendation to that. Regarding the George M. Porter Park and Porter Ranch Park, there was a suggestion of Porter Ranch Park. We have Porter Ridge Park and Porter Ranch Park, so there could be a potential for confusion there, and that's why I wanted to go with Community Park, because it also is nearby the Porter Ranch Community School, so there is some continuity there. And regarding George M. Porter Park, my opinion on that is that, for example, it doesn't necessarily tell you where the park is immediately, because you may not correlate George M. Porter with Porter Ranch immediately, but when it's Porter Ranch Park, I think it's very important for a park to be first saying where it is. Holly Burnson Park, nobody knows where it is. My daughter calls it Cessna Park because it's on Cessna. So I think it's important, Mason Park is on Mason, Reseda Park, it's important to like Reseda Park is on Reseda. So that's like the foundational component to it. And then with respect to Isam's comment that this park was conceived through Mitch Englander, I've studied in depth the specific plan for Porter Ranch, which dates back to the 1980s. And during that period of time was when community residents fought for certain public benefits within the community. Some of those benefits have been discussed in comments that we've given at developments, including the art fund that I mentioned, the 50-acre park, the school. This was all conceived prior to Englander. Now, not to say that Englander hasn't done a lot for our council district. He has done a lot. But I just want to point out that the park was simply a requirement with the developer to be put in. So the developer had to put in the 50-acre park. That needed to be done, and that was negotiated way back when, prior to Englander. So even prior to Hal Burnson, I believe, I'm not sure, but it was. So that's all. I just wanted to clarify that the park is part of the development agreement and the specific plan, and if you look to those documents, that's where the park comes about.
Just very briefly, in support of a few points made at the board, what I would say is I would support the name Porter Ranch Community Park in that concept. because it is a park belonging to us in Porter Ranch, and I think that's a good solid name as opposed to any other name, and especially a gentleman mentioned the other Boom Park, or, that's not probably a proper name. So to make our voice heard, I'm willing to support the motion which carries the Porter Ranch Community Park.
Alex?
Yeah, I don't have any problem supporting this motion as written, the way it was. Porter Pavilion, Orange Community Park, I don't have any problem supporting.
Okay. Any other comment? Yes?
Yeah, as far as the history goes, George Porter was the first one where you're starting history of it. There was Nathan Chappelle, there was Hal Burnson, there were a lot of people. The history of that park, Mitch was involved in that for 20, 30 years. The park, we moved the school. The school was zoned to be a middle school and an elementary school. We put them together. Instead of 6 acres, we got 13. And we worked with the developer to put the school in a certain location where the park was. And I'm going to tell you, Mitch had everything to do with that park being there. Without Mitch, that park wouldn't be there, the school wouldn't be there. The man was brilliant. That's part of history. And that's, George Porter's name is everywhere. It's also people who have come after him. I mean, Nathan Chappelle was in World War, he escaped from the Nazis and came here and he bought the land for what, $2.50 an acre, and look what he turned it into. Where's his name? Nowhere. He doesn't want it anywhere, he never did. So I think there's more to history than just George Porter. And I think that, neighborhood councils are supposed to reach out to the community. I think this is a great opportunity for some outreach, and I don't think that 11 or 12 of us should be making the decision for all of Porter Ranch. And just on my last comment, CD 12 has more parkland because of Mitch Englander, because of Hal Burnson, and because of Greg Smith than all the other council districts together, including Chatsworth, who practically has nothing. So it's not our park, it's a city park. It's not the Porter Ranch Community Park. And I think it's rubbing it in people's noses by naming it that. It's a City of Los Angeles park. You don't have a park. We've tried to get parks in Chatsworth. You have Mason Park and Chatsworth Park. Big deal. What else do you have? Look at other communities. So I think we have to look at it on a bigger scale, and I think that we need to involve not just Porter Ranch, but the whole community in the decision of what to call it. That's just my opinion.
Okay. Just to clarify, procedurally, any board member can bring any motion to the board can vote it up or down. So
Okay,
that's the challenge that we have. Anybody else wants to say something?
Can we divide the motion?
That is a motion amendment that goes to the author to either agree to it or not agree to it. If not agree to it, we vote on the motion as is.
How did we get two people from our board making the motion instead of just one? That's kind of odd.
No, it's,
Have we done that before?
yes.
I agree with pretty much everything that has been said, and I definitely agree that, there's been an important role for Chappelle and Englander, absolutely. I wasn't there seeing it, and you were, so I can do nothing but agree with what you said. So as the author of this, I wanted to bring this topic for discussion up to the board, and so this is the outreach. If I hadn't done this, there would be no outreach. So this is the point. This is the starting point, and I wanted this to come out and for people to be heard, the community to be heard, and you guys to chime in too.
So we have three options here. We have a motion and a second. We can have a request for non-readiness to vote. No, we made the motion. So we either amend the motion or vote on the motion. Can you make it quick?
I was just going to say, if we decide that we would like to do more outreach on getting a name from the community, outreach committee is willing to help set something up.
Well, we have the meeting coming up. The meeting for Rex and Parks is what? It's like next
14th.
week.
It's on Monday.
On Monday. So the idea behind this motion was to be able to go to that meeting and tell
Do
them
there.
that the board made this recommendation.
Okay.
So we can
And
vote
it's not
on
a
it,
done,
we
I'm
can
sorry, it's not
amend
a
it.
done deal with that meeting, that's one of their outreaches, so it's not like they're gonna make a decision on that date. There's still opportunities if we wanna call
Gotcha.
further meetings or further outreach.
We can vote on it, we can amend it as requested by a couple of board members, or we can also amend it to be, if everybody's asking for additional time for outreach, you know what? This can be a recommendation to Parks and Rec to withhold any action on the naming of the park until a community meeting is held and discussed. That's always an option for changing a motion for a recommendation. But we've debated it enough, I need to know.
Can I make a suggestion? I think it would make sense to split it up, because we have we're dealing with two different things. I think it seems like we have some more consensus on the naming of the school, of the Porter Ranch Community Park, the naming of the park, and then maybe we want to split it into have further debate on the naming of the pavilion, because it seems like the pavilion part is a little more contentious, or a little more further discussion might be needed. Is that
Yeah.
Are you amending the motion?
So I will amend the motion to read, motion to recommend to the City of LA Recreation and Parks Department that the new 50-acre park be named Porter Ranch Community Park, period.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any public comment on the amended motion? Okay, no comment. Any board discussion on the amended motion? All right, call the vote.
All right, David, absent, Hassan,
Yes.
Susan, is recused, Alex,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Andrew,
No.
Brandy,
Yes.
Becky,
No.
Assad is absent, Gabriel, yes, Isam,
Yes.
and motion passes.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda.
No. I wanted to do a second, now we do the naming of the pavilion. That's what I was saying. To divide it into two.
Pavilion and history?
That's what I thought we could do. That's what I understand. That we could divide it into two motions. So handle the second part of it. Now we can handle the pavilion discussion.
We had, okay, we're not having a discussion, we're deciding whether there's an amendment to the motion on that or not. But, you know, it should have been one amendment. You could have said whatever you want to say about the pavilion as part of the same motion, but it's just a procedural issue, so go ahead.
So the second, well, I'll bring the motion again. The motion to recommend to the City of LA Recreation and Parks Department that the pavilion at the new 50-acre park be named Porter Pavilion and include a fixed marquee and/or display or plaque with some historical background about the founders of the Porter Ranch and surrounding areas.
So you're not amending that part of the motion?
No, you're not amending it. You're keeping the motion exactly the same.
Keeping it
But he
the
split,
same.
but it's split.
That's splitting the motion so that we can now discuss the second.
Now we can say we don't
Oh.
like the pavilion.
If you wanted to amend it, that's fine. So we can decide if we want to take a position on the pavilion, if we want to amend the motion, keep it, take the motion, and just to separate it out. So we can pass the community park.
Do you have a second on that?
I'll second it.
All right, any public comment on that second part of the motion?
So Gabriel, did you second
Yes.
it?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, any board comment on that?
Could you repeat the motion so I
Yes.
understand it?
The motion to recommend to the City of LA Recreation and Parks Department that the pavilion at the new 50-acre park be named Porter Pavilion and include a fixed marquee and/or display or plaque with some historical background about the founders of Porter Ranch and surrounding areas.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
Just a
Public
real
comment,
quick
please.
comment is, so what you would have, Jason, is Porter Ranch Community Park, Porter Pavilion,
which sounds like it's,
No, just the pavilion, we're just talking about the name of the pavilion now.
I
It
know,
would
but
officially
if you now
Oh, I
have
see.
support to go to the meeting on Monday and say, the Porter Ranch Neighborhood Council supports having the name of the entire park be Porter Ranch Community Park. So you've already got the Porter family in the name of the whole park. And you're also now saying, okay, so this pavilion within this park should also be Porter. So you got Porter. It seems like here's an opportunity to use the pavilion for a secondary shout out.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm in favor of the motion as stated. I can get, we need to get some support for that. I guarantee you the support because the community's been actually been talking about this. And in the recreation and park guidelines, it says parks shall only be named, I know this is just the pavilion, but it applies to amenities in the park also, shall be named after living persons under circumstances requiring such naming as a condition precedent of a grant deed or covenant. And there is no grant deed or covenant requiring that it be named anything other than if it's named after a person. And yours fits right in with the guidelines. And I support the motion as written based on what's required by the Recreation Park Department.
Board, any further discussion on this?
I have the same concern she does, that if we're naming it, it's going to be, go to the Porter Ranch Community Park, Porter Pavilion, it's going to just be
Okay.
Did you, well, the idea by using Porter was that because you had George and Ben Porter, who were predominant landowners, so that would be paying homage to both of them. But George M. Porter could be an option too. I don't know if that's something the board would want to do.
Again,
I think we need to do outreach. I mean, we're complaining that we don't like the name of the city provided in here. A handful of people are telling what the name of the park. We haven't reached out to the community. We're doing, I mean, I thought we were supposed to do outreach. And that's just my hang up.
Okay, again, I would ask for a motion amendment to recommend time to withhold on the naming of the pavilion, now that we've recommended the park, the name on the pavilion until further input from the community is sought.
And we have land use study committee.
How is that? What's the idea with the outreach? So how do you want to do the outreach?
Well, we can talk about that, but we need to do, I don't think we should vote on it until we get some outreach.
Right now, we are trying to catch up with the Monday meeting and go to the Monday meeting with a statement of something. So, we have a statement that the board voted on the park naming. There's also discussion of the amenities, which includes the pavilion. So the question now, what does this board wants to go say on Monday? Are we, and we are voting on what to do for that. We're either keep the motion as it is, or consider amendments such as the idea of the recommendation being the community needs more time to have internal outreach in the neighborhood council and receive input from the community for the betterment of the community. That's, unless there are other motions maybe for amendments. But that's the requested amendment, I guess. And again, you're the author, so it's up to you to decide.
I support the outreach if there's a clear plan. If we say, okay, we're going to hold a special meeting, or we're going to hold a town hall, or we're going to do this or that.
You can say an outreach and come back at the January meeting with a motion for recommendation of a naming. February, I'm sorry.
Has anybody suggested a name? I mean, has the park, are there names floating around? Like, we have all these people running for the city council seat, but are there a whole bunch of people with a whole bunch of different names, or
We can easily ask the question in our e-blast.
on Facebook?
Well, I'd be supportive of additional outreach if there's commitments to
Well,
take.
are you on the land use committee?
Yes, let me just say what I was going to say. I would be supportive if I would get commitment from Esau and Brandy to take tangible steps to make that outreach. If we can have a meeting, if we can do a meeting, if we can do the e-blast, if we can do it on Facebook. We have a survey capability, which that was a motion I put forth to pay for the survey capability. We haven't used it once. I'd like to request access to that so we can do this type of outreach. So if I can get commitments from the board to support the outreach and get it done quickly, so because their decision is going to be made by Rex and Parks on this. So we need to get our position in before that. That's the challenge.
I commit to do on Facebook. I can go out and do a poll as soon as I can get internet access.
The e-blast goes out every weekend, and the question on that meeting can be on each e-blast between now and the next meeting, when this matter comes back to the board for a vote. So, again, you word the motion amendment as you see fit, and let's move on.
So I'd like to call a vote then.
If I could just say,
Motion.
as the person who's on development, on the land use committee, John, all the developers are part of that, right? Why aren't we having a discussion with everybody? And I think that's your committee's job.
Yeah, we
I
didn't
don't know
have
if it's
we posted the meeting, we had 2 meetings, and we did not have any stakeholders attend. So it's very hard to do outreach at a land use. This is the best outreach that we have gotten,
Okay, so you're keeping the motion as is?
Yeah, we have a motion on the floor in a second, so
All right, so the motion being amended, call the vote.
All right, David, absent. Hassan,
Abstain.
Susan, Alex,
Yes.
Jason,
yes.
Andrew,
No.
Brandy, Becky,
No.
Assad is absent. Gabriel, yes. Isam?
No.
Motion. 3-4.
You don't count the abstain. 3 yes, 4 no. Okay.
So the motion did not pass.
So we will do the outreach now, or do we have?
No,
You didn't amend it.
Yeah.
You didn't amend it to
Yeah,
go
put
in
it on
and say
next
that.
month's agenda.
But there's nothing that prohibits us from doing Facebook.
There's nothing that
Need a motion
prohibits us from doing anything.
That's all I'm saying.
We can still do it, but we didn't pass the motion saying that we were asking for time on Monday to do that. So the city will just go do whatever it is regardless of what we do. So is there a point to doing outreach?
Yes.
Yes.
You want,
You have to do that.
that's what the members of the board wanted to
That's
do.
what
So
we're here,
let's-
that's what we
let's
asked.
do
So
that.
let's move on to
No,
item,
I'm saying.
can we move on to the next
Yeah.
item? Item 16.
You can.
Okay.
Susan.
Okay. Discussion possible, okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
We need to catch up on time quickly, so.
Okay. Motion to authorize the Education and School Committee to organize a town hall meeting and spend up to $950 on the venue, food, and supplies. So the budget is below. This is similar to what we did before, where one of the main issues that came up on the survey is the need for room in the schools. We have a lot of homes that are being built, and PRCS is at capacity. So that's the focus of the topic of the town hall that the Education Committee decided would be capacities at schools. We would be inviting the LAUSD demographics people to come and give us the data and the plan for handling the influx of new children moving into the area.
Okay, I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, public comment. Public comment, board comment. All right, call the vote.
All right, David, absent. Hassan?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Becky?
Yes.
Assad is absent. Gabriel, yes. Isam?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 17. Before you go to item 17.
I know.
I'll second.
I was already.
Before you go to item 17, I have a little problem. Item 11 included
Oh.
a discussion and a possible action on Council File 17-1311. And we passed it. So, let me ask you, when is the CF coming up?
You want to do the next meeting design?
We can discuss it and vote on it then, and maybe now that we've listened to your presentation, maybe by that time we can actually have a community impact statement already in the motion to approve for filing. Thank you for understanding. I apologize. All right, item 17.
Motion to approve board member reimbursement for Gabriel Kinlan in the amount of $27.36.
Okay, this is in regard to...
This is, this is a
Just-
reimbursement for items for the holiday party.
Okay, public comment? Board comment? Call the vote.
All right, David, absent. Hassan?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Andrew? Randy?
Yes.
Becky?
Yes.
Assad? Absent. Gabriel? Yes. Isam?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 18, Susan.
Discussion and possible action to authorize up to $320 for refreshments and for table covers for the West Valley Neighborhood Alliance on Homelessness Forum scheduled for Saturday, February 16th, 2019 at the Robotics High School. I mentioned this earlier. It's a forum so that people can learn about what is being done about the homeless crisis. And as we voted to be part of the West Valley Alliance, which is a series of neighborhood councils that come together to work on these issues together. And last time Northridge West Neighborhood Council provided the refreshments. And so this time Porter Ranch would like to provide that. And that's what it is. It's like water, coffee, nuts, just some snacks. So as people go around and learn about what the different organizations do, they have something to munch.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
Yes,
Go.
just a second. Is there a problem first?
Is that a second or a problem?
No, this is a question.
Okay.
Randy seconded.
Okay, so let me ask the public.
No. I'm gonna stick my face on this first.
What's,
The question is, don't we have table covers? Do we already buy tablecloths?
Do you have 25 or 30? This is for each table. We do?
So what we did was I found it was cheaper and easier to buy wrapping paper from the dollar store, and that was our table cover.
It's
Yeah.
just wrapping
There's
paper.
lots of wrapping paper left that we could flip over and use the white side.
can I clarify that this motion is about an up to, so
Yeah.
let's, it's
So we can
about-
work together if that's, wouldn't look too cheesy for the nice volunteer organizations.
I'm just saying that's what the table covers were.
Yeah.
There are no actual table covers.
So we'll work together and it's up to.
Okay, so public comment? Any additional board comments on the motion as stated? All right, no further comments, call the vote.
David, absent. Hassan?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Alex? Jason?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Becky?
Yes.
Assad is absent. Gabriel, yes. Isam?
Yes.
And motion passes.
Thank you. We're going to the agenda. Thank you for everybody. We're adjourning the meeting at